Hi everyone. Hope you're having a nice week so far. And today I have a real treat. I have Filipa Bellette. Is that how I pronounce it?
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
Fabulous. With me today, and we've connected through a mastermind group that we're in. And I've actually been watching. Do you like Philly or Philippa?
Go Philly.
Philly, okay.
Yeah.
I've been watching Philly and what she's doing. I absolutely love it. It's very aligned with where my whole sort of mental side goes when it comes to medicine and healing our bodies and all of that. And when Philly reached out to me, and I was like, "Oh, this is really exciting because I've been watching you." So it's really really nice. So I'm very appreciative. And
Awesome.
yeah, so we'll delve a bit more into your story in a moment, but it's watching what you do and that connecting to your body. I feel like there's a lot of your journey in there as well, which I'd like to hear a bit more about. And we did speak briefly about money before we hit record. But before I get too much into the story, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and perhaps a bit about how you actually came to do it.
Yeah, awesome. So my name is Filipa Bellette, or most people call me Philly, and I am a functional medicine practitioner, coach, trauma therapist, and I run a holistic health practice with my husband. And the practice is called Chris and Philly Functional Medicine. We're based in Tasmania, but we do operate virtually Australia-wide, and we have international clients as well. So I got into this line of work because of my own health issues. So after I had my first baby, which was 12 years ago, already I was kind of burning the candle at both ends. I was running very strong patterns of overworking, overdoing perfectionism, right back from as a teenager in high school. I started just actually getting good grades, not really trying. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this feels good. People are praising me. Okay, this must mean that I'm like a worthwhile human being. So I pretty much just, all my energy was in getting good grades and doing really well at school. And then before I had my first baby, I was doing a PhD. When I look back in hindsight, I'm really glad that I did it. And I enjoyed, actually, that's not the best word. There was passion there for sure. But I feel like I kind of just fell into it because it's like, I'm good at studying. So, like, okay, not many people do PhDs. I'll give it a go. So I
Hmm.
was already running like quite overachieving, overworking patterns before my daughter came along. When when she came along, the birth was quite traumatic. So it was a 3-day labor. Um, was going to do all like the hypnobirthing stuff, but my body was just already in such a state of fight or flight. I also had symptoms before that of called vasovagal episodes, basically. Like, and this started happening as a teenager. So I would black out, fit, pee myself when my body was under stress. And so, of course, my body went into massive panic mode the moment that I started having contractions. And so there was a lot of intervention to get her out. And I ended up having severe bladder issues. They don't even know what it was or what to call it, but basically, all my nerves kind of became numb and I had no sensation to urinate. So I literally could not pee. A lot of mums post birth have accidents with peeing, but
Yes.
I literally could not push out a single drop of wee. So I had to use an internal catheter for probably about the first 4 months of Poppy
Wow.
being born until my bladder retrained. But during that time, I was on heaps of antibiotics, in and out of hospital with infections and different complications.
Yeah.
And unlike my other friends and my sisters who were having babies around the same time, they were getting better each month
Mm.
postpartum. I was getting worse. And by the time Poppy turned 1, I literally felt like an 80-year-old. So I had chronic pain in my body,
Hmm.
really low immunity. I was catching all the colds, flus, infections, gut issues, hormone issues, anxiety, depression, chemical sensitivities, histamine intolerance, food sensitivities. And I wasn't getting much help with the GP. She was lovely, but in the end, it's like, oh, your bloods look fine. I mean, your thyroid's a little bit out, but it's not too bad. It's just part
Mm.
of being a new mum. And I'm like, no, it's not because I'm seeing everyone else healing and I'm getting worse.
Yeah.
So that's where I started looking into natural medicine. And I first started with just using food as medicine. So
Yeah.
healing my diet, healing my body with eating real food. And that was a really big light bulb moment back then. It's like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
like the processed foods I'm eating could actually be flaring up my body.
Yeah.
And over time, I started to feel better. And then we had baby number two. And this time I'm like, things are going to be so much better because, like, I'm so healthy now and I'm eating well and I'm sleeping and I'm exercising. And we have no toxins in our home. But literally 2 weeks after Elsie was born, which was a lovely birth, and it was a cesarean. I
Mhm.
chose it because I still had a lot of unprocessed trauma from the first birth. Um, but because she was a pretty easy kid and I bounced back pretty quickly, all my perfectionism, overdoing patterns just set right back in. So I'm
Mm.
like, okay, let's get back into business and study and like all the things. And my body just spoke loud and clear to me and flared up again with all the same symptoms. And I was
Yeah.
so confused. And then I came across functional medicine. For those who are listening who don't know what that is, it sits in the realm of natural therapies. Um, but it's kind of similar to like nutritional medicine, naturopathy, but we're also using lab testing that goes
Mm.
beyond what GPs, medical specialists test for. So we can actually look at the microbiome, we can look at parasites and
Yeah.
leaky gut and candida and adrenal fatigue and detox pathways, all those imbalances that can cause major issues that
Yeah.
GPs, medical specialists haven't yet caught up with in testing.
Yeah.
So that was a game changer. I did a lot of therapeutic support based on what my results showed, and I had everything that I just mentioned before: adrenal fatigue, low dopamine, parasites, pathways that aren't working.
Yeah.
And things got better. And by this time, I was a practicing clinical nutritionist and functional medicine practitioner too. And then COVID 2020 came along. Didn't have a baby that year, but there was a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And this is where a lot of my money fears really came to the surface. I knew that they were always there. Like, looking back in hindsight, I was, even as a teenager, a massive Scrooge. Like, I would save every penny and again
Yeah.
get praised for it. My parents were always like, you like, to my siblings, you should be more like Philippa. You should save your money. Yet it was such a fear-based behavioral pattern that I didn't understand back then, but I was literally too scared to spend my money.
Yeah.
And that carried over as an adult as well until 2020 happened. There was a lot of financial stress and strain, and my husband's business got locked down, as everyone, like most businesses were. But he also decided, he's just like, I'm not going to open it up again.
Yeah.
And I'm like freaking out. Like, this is our main stream of income. I mean, I was a sole trader back then as a practitioner, but the gym was a big part of our income. And then he's like, I'm going to join your practice, and like, it's going to be awesome. And we're going to do like an online business, and we're going to have so much more freedom, and I'm going to be able to spend time with the kids. And I was on board with that too, because he was really burnt out as well. Um, and I wanted that for our family, but my nervous system was just freaking out for like
Mm.
a good 18
Would be.
months. And my body symptoms all came back again as well, but this time insomnia in the mix, which was something I hadn't really experienced in the past. And that just
Mhm.
made everything so much worse.
Yeah.
And I was trying to use my same tools in the toolkit. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can understand that there's stress. Let's run some labs. Let's take some supplements. Let's dial in the diet, up the sleep hygiene. But this time, nothing physical that I did budged any symptoms at all.
Yeah.
And then that's where I started looking into what in our practice we now call metaphysical healing, which I
Mhm.
know that, you would do a lot of like the inner mind work around money.
Yeah.
But I started looking at that. Actually, it's interesting. I went down that path because I knew that there were major money issues. So I found an amazing life coach.
Hmm.
I didn't actually believe or think that I would be able to heal my body using this method, but it just
Yeah.
so happened that I not only healed my money issues and my relationships and my life, but
Yeah.
also my body just returned back to its true form of health.
Yeah. Yeah. Goodness me, what a powerful story. There's so much in there. Oh, well, it's really interesting whenever I hear sort of people who are so passionate about what they do. It's generally there's stuff that they've gone through, but you've really gone through the ringer. Like, you've experienced probably almost everything that any of your clients would come to you with,
Yeah.
which is which is great from a practitioner point of view, but not great for you as a human and your body health. But it's, yeah, and this is the interesting thing. Like when I've been on my own personal journey, and when you try and do the physical things, like I was actually at my acupuncturist yesterday because it's I hurt my foot, and he was like, yeah, you're very like data sort of driven person. I was like, yeah, but it's all there's more to it than that. But it's you can only logic yourself so far
Mm.
until you've got to delve into the what else is going on.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, sometimes it can be generational as well. So we have, if we go back to our childhood, that's one thing. We can sort of look at, our money stories and what our parents told us, but then it's also what were their stories. And then you could even go back to grandparents. Like I can attribute some of my money stuff back to my grandmother, and she would have got that from her mum.
Yeah.
And in my
Yep.
family, there's a long line of only girls. There's a lot of feminine energy, and there's also a lot of money stuff around the feminine as well. So there's a lot of that too. So have you gone deeper, like beyond your childhood as well? Like, and do you see that coming up in health issues also with your clients? Because I feel like some health stuff we take on because sometimes we're told, oh, this is just genetic. And I'm like, yeah, but at some point it wasn't there and then it was. So something happened to change that. And can we
Yeah.
then change it back to the way it perhaps
Yeah.
was? How does
Yeah.
that play out in your work?
Yeah. So definitely we go back to childhood. So if someone presents with like the three big symptoms we see in our practice are energy, mood, and gut issues. And gut
Mhm.
issues show up as all sorts of inflammatory issues like autoimmune disease, chronic pain, that sort of stuff. And so we work off the presupposition that health is the default. When you can take the handbrake off and allow yourself to flourish, health is just where you end up. So the reason why people end up in body burnout and with chronic health issues is because there's a great fear about themselves hidden and stuck inside the unconscious mind.
Mm,
And until that's resolved, then the body continues to speak because it literally gets stuck in fight flight. So it's like this baggage in the unconscious mind, the beliefs that we have about ourselves, past distressing events, all end up like little tigers that are chasing us. So in the health industry, and I'll get to your question in terms of childhood in a second, but I just thought I'd contextualize it
yeah, of
from a
course.
health point of view. In the health industry, and this is how I used to practice too. It's like, okay, do this test, take this supplement, do this diet, and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
However, when people have this unconscious baggage inside of their system, that is like an internal stressor that never turns off. Like it's there 24/7. So people when they're trying to heal from chronic health issues are thinking about like, okay, let's ditch the alcohol. That's stressful. That's inflammatory, and the sugar and the toxins from skincare, which is all important.
Mm,
Yet a lot of people don't realize that they've got this internal tiger chasing them all the time. So
yeah.
we get a lot of clients who have tried a lot of things, kind of like standard medicine plus like standard functional medicine, naturopathy, nutrition type things, and their body's still not responding.
Yes.
And so therefore they believe something about themselves. So every behavior has a belief underneath, including the
Hmm.
way that the body behaves. And if the body's talking to you loud and clear with pain, it's trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
And so we'll go right back to childhood. Our main focus, like both for myself with the healing work that I did from the metaphysical side of things, as well as for our clients, is to identify the deepest root cause dysfunctional belief they have about themselves,
Yeah.
because the beliefs we are operating out of our belief system. So I'll give you an example for myself. I developed a belief that I was weak and incapable as a little girl, and it all started on a stage. I'd memorized a little talk, and I stood on that stage and I could not remember the words. And I was so embarrassed, so humiliated. I burst out crying, and I had to sit on that stage while all the other little kids came up and did their talks perfectly.
Yeah.
And as they were coming up, I'm like, there must be something wrong with me. Why can they do it and I can't? And
Mm,
over time, I just collected more evidence that
yeah.
I'm inherently weak and incapable. And that overflowed into every aspect of my life.
Yeah.
So my body, if in every cell in my body I believed that I was weak and incapable, then therefore my body is weak and incapable, and it
Mm,
can't function in this world that is high paced and loud and toxic. And so I was always clutching for external ways to try and to heal it, as opposed to actually addressing inside of me. And then, like, from a money point of view, it was huge. I always thought money was the thing that was stressful, but it was actually the belief that I had about myself, and money was just the trigger.
Yeah.
And so if I had a belief that I was weak and incapable, then how the heck could I make money? How the heck could I like save it?
Yeah.
At some point I'm going to lose it. How could I spend it? How could I make good decisions? So money was, I would say, like, out of all the stresses in my life,
Mm.
that was the biggest one for sure.
Yeah. And that gets stored in our bodies, and we have such an innate belief. It's interesting how, and they come again and again. So it's one of those things, like, even when you deal with the beliefs, and the first step for me always is awareness, being aware that they're even there. But then what do you keep on doing with it as well? Because there'll have been so much evidence over your past that reinforces the belief. So you could always go back, and someone's always going to be there to remind you as well, especially when you're just starting on the path of getting through and understanding the beliefs and witnessing them. And someone will always, who knows you from childhood, will go, well, you were always bad with money. Well, you were
Yeah.
always such a saver. You never spent any money. You were such a Scrooge. It's quite often siblings who like to like poke the bear,
Yes.
especially
Yes.
if they start to see you changing and flourishing, because they're like, I don't know who this person is. They're going to leave me behind. So I need to
Mm.
pull them back. And so
Mm.
we've got that. We might have some, that beginner's luck. We might have some initial wins, and then something will happen and someone will go, see, you're just the same person. You haven't changed. And then
Yeah.
you'd be like, oh my gosh. So it's one of those things where we have to be aware of it. We need the tools to be able to deal with it, but we've got to recognize that it's going to be a continuous iterative process. And to a certain extent, it's almost never gone, because
Mm.
we're still the people we were, and there's still memory. And while we have memory, there will always be remnants of that belief,
Mm.
but we just have to work beyond it and believe a little bit more about where we want to go than where we were. And it's
Mm.
also clarifying. So as part of the journey, did you also start to clarify? Because this is one of the things that I find one of the biggest hurdles for people, is they don't know where they're going. Where we're so conditioned to just follow one step in ahead of the other and do what everybody else is doing, because of course we can now see it even more acutely with social media, and we've got to do what everybody else is doing, and if you're not, then you're doing something wrong. And then all of the conditioning kind of supports all of that. Have you found that as your journey's progressed, you've had to become clearer on where you're heading so that you can stay connected to that rather than be pulled back into the past?
Yeah, absolutely. When COVID happened and my husband joined my practice and then we made it like a proper business, he still is very visionary, high risk taker. Like, from a money point of view,
Yeah.
it's nothing to him. Like, it's energy exchange, really. It's
Yeah.
like, it's not, doesn't have any stories around money that are negative, actually, I don't think,
Yeah. Well, it's
except
good.
for
You're a good balance
maybe,
then.
yeah, it was, but it was back then when my body was very dysregulated and I still hadn't uncovered any of my own money stories. That, like, his vision really scared me as well. Goes back to the
Mm,
weak and incapable. It's like, oh my gosh, he's too big for me. He's too loud. He's like, we're going to lose all our clients if we change anything.
mm,
Um, and so over time, I mean, not that yeah, well, yeah, like, initially I was piggybacking on his. I'm like, okay, yep, I'll just trust that he knows where we're going.
yeah.
But that was still out of alignment for me
Yeah.
because it was still unsafe. It wasn't coming from inside of me. I was putting my trust into something else. And actually, I wasn't even putting my trust. I was just like, okay, let's just gamble on this person. Ah!
You're like, I don't have any better ideas, so I might just follow,
I
perhaps.
don't have any better ideas.
Yeah.
Um, so looking forwards, well, I also think about it from a physiological point of view that our our brain is always looking for more evidence of what we believe and what we want
Yeah.
as well. And so in our practice, like, the first question we always ask people is, what do you want? And they're like, I don't want bloating anymore. I don't want anxiety. I don't want chronic fatigue. And it's
Hmm.
like, okay, but what do you want?
Yeah.
Because your brain will just continue to go back to those old patterns because it's like, oh, we're doing more of that. We're doing more chronic fatigue today. Oh, we're doing more anxiety.
It's known.
Yeah, it's known. And
Mm,
so I started practicing what I preached as well. I'm like, okay, well, if I want to have a successful business and a profitable business, then I'm literally going to wake up every day and imagine that that already is my reality. And same with my health too. Like something that I just think is still remarkable that my mind was able to do this, but I had a pretty intense milk allergy or dairy allergy.
Okay.
Um, to the point that even if I ate something with milk solids in it, so sometimes you get packaged food and it doesn't have any milk or butter in it, but it has
Right.
like a tiny amount of milk solids, my body
Yeah.
would react in a really inflammatory way to that food.
Mm.
And it wasn't the sugar, it wasn't the gluten, it was literally the milk solids because I'd done so much elimination on different things. And that was
Yeah.
also my perfectionism patterns that kind of like
Yeah.
continued to perpetuate my health issues. Um, but yeah, I just started waking up every day and before even eating the foods or trialing eating the dairy, I just imagined my immune cells being completely calm around dairy. And my dairy stuff was to do with my hormones as well. So imagining that my hormones were nice and humming and like my focus was just on that. My
Yeah.
focus was on this is how my body responds when I choose to eat certain amounts of dairy.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking towards what you want is so important. And if you
Mm.
just focus on what you don't want, it just becomes a continual self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, yes, and it's because what's known is what we cling to, and this is very much when because I've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole with habits, and it's very much about what our brains know has kept us alive. You know, we're still very much there's a primal element to us humans, even though we're now we're civilized and we have supermarkets and we don't have to worry about saber-toothed tigers because well they're extinct now, but all of that kind of stuff. A lot of the things that would have really caused a lot of stress in our lives don't exist, so we've replaced them with other things and our bodies cling to the stuff that we know, even though it won't kill us, it won't make us thrive. But if it doesn't kill us, then we think it's safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because our bodies don't differentiate between what's healthy and unhealthy. It's just whether or not we're alive or dead. And
Yeah.
it's really that linear. And with money, we attach so much sort of meaning and emotion to it. It's like what you were saying with your husband. It is just energy.
Mm.
These days it's not even a tactile thing that we can really touch quite often, just tapping a phone. So it literally is just the energy of it and recognizing that that energy is neutral. It's not judging you, we're judging ourselves
Yeah.
and all of that goes attached with it. And if we don't have enough of something, and the thing is, I still remember back to the days where I was, just coming out of university. I was just starting my first real job. I didn't really have much money behind me, and I was a bit like you. I was a bit of a squirreler, but I love travel, so I had spent a bit of money on some travel before I started work. And I was like, you know what? I think I was almost happier when I had less because I had to just be content with what I had.
Mm.
And I was focused on enjoying life rather than on how much money I had.
Mm.
And the more you amass, there's like this more you have to lose in your mind. And so it becomes like the problems that you haven't dealt with as, in your childhood grow and grow.
Mm.
So in a way, having the money itself doesn't actually make you happy. It gives you choices. And you
Yeah.
have to be very conscious about those choices, whether it's toward or away from. And a
Yeah.
lot of our decisions are away from, which is interesting. When I was looking, and Chris does NLP, and
Yeah.
then my mother studied NLP, and there's very much that away toward. And I, there's so much out there, and even the languaging. I had to, as soon as you said, you used to ask your clients, what do you want? And they went straight to what they don't want. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, gosh, there's so much in the languaging there that if we're just aware of it, we'd just blow our minds to the point where we'd feel so much freer.
Yeah. 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 Being aware of it and your unconscious mind, which is controlling everything, doesn't know the difference between
Mm.
what's happening in reality and what you're richly imagining and
Yes.
thinking even. So it's such a powerful biohack.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's because I used to love reading like fiction and my first author, and I still have everything she's ever written, is Agatha Christie. So I loved the sort of, and then I used to read like forensic science. I loved all of that, and I can't remember. Like I barely read fiction now. I love the nonfiction because it's really, delving into our psychology and reading about stories of people, and my brain won't know the difference. It
Yeah.
it will, it will take one as real as the other, and we're reading the words on a page, whether they're from a true story or a fictitious story. It's what we're taking in. So
Yeah.
when we think about it in such sort of simpler terms, it's there, but they're concepts that are just not, they're being shared more now.
Mm.
Especially in, there's a lot of stuff around manifestation, and there's a lot about that, but society does not support that kind of thing.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and to a certain extent, when that book, The Secret, and then the movie came, or the docu-film came out, I think it almost hurt things more than it helped,
Mm.
because all people took away from that was, I'm going to manifest a car space. Like,
Yeah.
which I was
Yeah.
like, really? If you had a choice to manifest something, would it really be a car space?
Yeah.
So with your journey and how you continue, how do you see it as an up and down sort of a thing, or is it sort of more a steady up, or how have you seen in your journey, and then also with your customers and your clients?
Mm. Probably more like a spiral.
Yeah.
I actually did a podcast. I've turned 40 last month. So I did a
Oh, happy
podcast
birthday.
on the four biggest lessons I've learned around about healing in my 4 decades of living.
Yeah.
And one of them was around like macro versus micro when it comes to healing. And that's also in reference to like living a life as well. So a lot of people focus on the micro, which is important. Like
Yeah.
micro would be like, okay, if I'm contextualizing it in terms of like healing with a health protocol or something, it's like, okay, I have to do this, this, and this today, and these are the steps to get to the outcome,
Mm.
and X, Y, and Z. So, and tracking, like symptom tracking, kind of falls into the micro way of healing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important because it can help you get from A to B. However, what I find is that a lot of people get so fixated on the micro side of healing
Yeah.
that when something pops up, whether it's like a symptom flare up or a stressful life event that causes everything to go off kilter, or old patterns, or maybe like a new self-limiting belief pops up and it's causing a lot of dysfunction,
Mm.
whatever it is, a lot of people are like, oh, this sucks. Like maybe I haven't done it right the first time. I'm just going backwards, and it can become a bit of a motivation kill.
Yeah.
And it can get, and I have seen this, and I would say from personal experience as well, that a lot of people can get stuck in like this loop where they're not doing good enough. Like
Yeah.
obviously I'm not doing it
Absolutely.
right. That's the perfectionism pattern showing up again.
Yeah.
And so then they feel like, well, the only way I can move forward is to either try harder, or I'm
Yeah.
going to totally ditch that thing and I'm going to try something else. So like, the yo-yo dieting or yo-yo practitioner hopping or whatever it is, the
Yeah.
next shiny thing that's going to help them like be awesome.
Yeah.
um Whereas the macro lens of healing and health, and like that's not just physical health, but health in all areas of your life, is looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So it is like when your body starts speaking to you, and loud and clear, rather than hating on that, it's like, oh, this is just a piece of information, like a piece of data that I'm now ready for. What are you trying to tell me, body?
Yes.
Or it might be, maybe someone has worked on a lot of their money mindset, but then all of a sudden they've reached a new level of growth, and maybe they have increased their prices in their business,
Yeah.
or, even like retirement or whatever it is. And then maybe it feels like same stuff shows up, but it's actually
Mm.
not. Like it's just now a new nuance because you're in a
Different
new
agitator.
season, yeah, of your life.
Yeah.
So I think about the journey. I don't know, like, is it spiral? Is it up and down? And is it a line that's continually going up? Maybe.
Yeah.
I just feel
It's
like
different for everyone.
yeah. My best way of answering that question is with every season of growth,
Mm-hmm.
your nervous system is going to feel some uncertainty,
Yes.
because it's like, I haven't done life like this
Yeah.
yet. And so the nervous system is always looking for safety and survival.
Yeah.
And when something feels uncertain, then like our primal instinctive is this is unsafe, or
Mm,
maybe I just need to put some warning signals up. So I find that a lot of people who have had chronic health issues, the
mm,
main way that their unconscious mind and nervous system talks to them is through physical pain.
yeah.
Um, and so that's actually like really beautiful. It's like far out. You can't miss
Yeah.
that. Like you've got
Getting a
this
message.
amazing internal communication pathway with yourself that when you listen to it, and you can also learn to listen to the subtle signs so that you're not back in like chronic fatigue or full
Mm,
on diary episodes or whatever it is. There'll usually be like a lot more smaller subtle signs
yes.
that when you listen to that and take action, those signs or signals switch off, and
Yeah.
it's safe to be you. It's safe to be you in this level of growth. It's safe to press the safe to succeed button.
Yeah, it's so important listening to our bodies. And it's people talk about intuition a lot. And I was like, well, it's built into that, but it's listening to our bodies. Like for instance, like I hurt one ankle last week, but it healed pretty quickly. And then the other ankle or the other foot's hurt. And I was like, rather than getting upset about it, because I tend to move quite quickly. And I don't sit still very, very well. And I thought, okay, I need to lean into this. And rather getting annoyed about the fact that now my ability to move has been restricted, I need to actually go, okay, what is my body telling me? Why have I now had a foot, which is literally my ability to move, been sort of temporarily sort of made it a bit more difficult? So yeah, so I'm leaning into that. And meditation's not one of my strong suits, but I am working on it.
Yeah.
Trying to listen. Had a little conversation with my body last night, and yeah, a little bit better today.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting. A lot of this is not what we're taught, and I think it's fantastic that you do this. There's two things because I entered my 40s a little bit before you.
Mhm.
And there's probably two things I hear a lot, which I wanted to get your take on. The first one is gut health, and the other one is perimenopause. Oh my gosh, I hear those terms so often. How we'll start with the gut health. What do
Mhm.
you how does that how do you see that? Because I hear a lot. Like I realize we have a brain in our stomach, apparently, and taking care of that. I personally have been leaning into the low toxin, no sugar, for many years, and all the skincare. Like I'm very focused on a lot of that.
Mm.
And gut stuff showed up for me in a
Mm.
dairy intolerance. But it wasn't actually, I don't think it was actually dairy, because we went to Europe last year and I could eat
Mm.
as much dairy as I wanted and I didn't have an issue. So I thought it was more
Mm.
stress related. And so now I've come back, I've been working on that, but I'm not changing my physical eating. I'm
Mm.
just working on what I tell myself when I eat it. And that has
Yeah.
made a huge difference. So
Yeah.
how does gut stuff kind of show up for you in your world?
Yeah. So, well, in our practice, we don't like we're straddling both the physical and the metaphysical always. It's not
Yeah.
one or the other. It's
Yeah.
literally like they both, you cannot separate the two.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to gut health, yeah, like we'll still do investigations into the physical side of what's going on in the gut.
Yeah.
If someone has nasty pathogens, well, it's inflammatory. So let's get rid of those. If your beneficial bacteria are really depleted, then let's support those with prebiotics and like lots of plant fibers.
Yeah.
If you've got leaky gut, that can be, again, really inflammatory. Nasty things can seep into your bloodstream and then your immune system goes crazy.
Yeah.
So it is really important. And a lot of people, like especially in the natural health space, talk about gut health as being
Mhm.
the center of all disease. I actually disagree with that. I don't think there's one thing.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a combination of lots of things for an individual person.
Yes.
Um, but I love working on the gut because it can just help with speeding up recovery and healing so much faster when there are nasty things in there, or when there are beneficial things that aren't working very well. And like there's some great therapies, supplements,
Yeah.
different types of healing diets that can really help to speed up the healing process.
Yeah.
Where I think people put too much emphasis on the gut is when they only think that it's physical.
Yeah.
So the brain, and your example and what I was talking about with dairy too is a great example. So you might have a gut issue, whether that's a food sensitivity, bloating, reflux, whatever. It might have started physically. Like it literally might have been like you just grew up on a processed diet, and over time our bodies can't process plastic. So there's going to be some stuff that happens, or maybe you went to India and you picked up Giardia, which is a really awful parasite. So it might have, like, your gut symptoms might have started in the gut.
Yeah.
But I always think about two things. So sometimes I'll have a client and there is a story where they went traveling, they got really sick, and their gut has never been the same since.
Yeah.
Sometimes there was also a partner that traveled with them that also got sick, and that partner just recovered after 48 hours and the gut was fine.
Right.
And so my question around that first would always be, why has your gut not healed and theirs did?
Yeah.
What's happening at a deeper metaphysical level? Because when someone is in a chronic fight, flight, stress response state, their immune system is suppressed.
Yes.
And so then all sorts of nasty things can start happening in the gut when that's the case.
Yeah.
So it's kind of looking at, like, how is that person wired and how is that person being that is not enabling their body to self-heal, because we have the capacity to be able to do that.
Yes.
And then the other thing too is neural pathways. So, there might have been a real food intolerance that may have started, whether that was physical or metaphysical, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But what happens over time when it's a chronic health issue, and this was the case for me, like I had chronic heartburn every day, every meal, it would just flare up.
Okay.
But I knew it was definitely worse with stress.
Mm-hmm.
So already that told me that it's like, oh, okay, it's probably
Something
not just a
external
gut
going on.
thing. But I developed such hard neural pathways that basically there were quite a few triggers that triggered the heartburn. And it was, yes, it was a physical response, but it was also a neural response as well. So my brain got really clever that when I smelt paint, I would get heartburn.
Oh, wow.
When I ate anything, I would get heartburn. When I ate histamine foods in particular, that was really bad. When I was stressed, when I didn't sleep well, when I went into the chlorinated pool, and, like, my whole system had just created this protective mechanism around what I deemed, like my belief system deemed, was unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And then therefore it sent that signal. But like literally there was something physical happening as well. A lot of people, I get the narrative that a client goes to the GP and they end up just telling them it's all in their head. And, that's really demoralizing, but there's actually some truth in that too, that actually it is, but it's still physical.
Yeah.
You're not just being a hypochondriac, but you've got all these like amazing different pathways in your body that are just so clever at sending you pain signals when you don't feel safe.
Yes. Yeah, my dad, I mean, admittedly, he's 82, so there's some physical stuff that's degraded. But for him, it was very much, and my grandmother was the same, interestingly enough, the pain, and that brought attention. So whenever, and the fact that, oh, I'm going to the doctor again, I'm going to the doctor, or I've called the ambulance, there was always so much attention surrounding it that when they didn't get the sort of attention they wanted, something worse would happen, rather than going, okay, why don't I try and lean into why this is, what sort of attention do I actually want? So it's really interesting. So there's this, gosh, we can be complex creatures, us humans.
We can be, yeah. And then your other one was perimenopause. I don't know, maybe my entering the 40s. So I'm sort of like in that space as well. Okay. My first thing around that is that it's not normal to have perimenopausal symptoms. Yeah. And that's a narrative that needs to change, because a lot of women, like literally I have clients sitting on the other side, whether it's like in the room or on video with me. And when I tell them that, they're like, I've never heard that. Like I just thought that to move into menopause, we must have hot flushes and be emotional dragons and have insomnia and put on weight and have like migraines. So what we were talking about before, like the self-fulfilling prophecy, what you believe is going to happen will happen.
Yeah.
So if anyone's listening right now and they have like, oh, wow, this is a new piece of evidence, I would actually attach onto that. I had a lady reach out to me through Facebook. She asked questions around, oh, do you prescribe bioidentical hormones? And, do you work with perimenopausal women and da-da-da-da? And I wrote back a response. And then at the end I said, just asked her a question. I'm like, oh, are you struggling with perimenopausal symptoms at the moment? And she said, no, but I just want to be ready
Yeah.
And so rather than me pitching in to say, come and work with us, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give you the best tip ever that can change the next 10 years for you is just believe that you're going to move into menopause. Lovely. And you probably will.
Yeah.
Like if there's no underlying signs yet, or,
Yeah.
you've been a pretty healthy person for the rest of the previous years, then there's no
Yeah.
reason why you should.
Yeah. I so love that you said that because I've been feeling that as well. I see all these things, and because I'm in my mid 40s now, I get, I don't know, algorithms send me stuff and I get invited to events and Facebook, and I was there going, I don't know, there's something about this that just feels like a it just doesn't feel like it's necessary or it's even real. And
Yeah.
partly because when I went through my teenage years, I was not that hormonal teenager. I didn't get the terrible skin, I didn't get the mood swings, I didn't get any of that. And partly like my mom was just saying, "Oh, you were such a dream," but her memory can be a little bit shaky anyway. But I actually remember not experiencing any of the things that everybody said. And I've done this a lot, like with my daughter, when people said, "Oh, terrible twos." She never went through the terrible twos. She's never like, I always treated her like she was that beautiful being who I just needed to honor who she is, listen
Mm.
to her, explain things, and go, you may not know this, but if you do this, these are some scenarios of what could happen. And do you really want to be that sort of a person? You know, if you hear the
Mm.
words, that whole sharing is caring thing, oh my God, they used to drive me balmy. I was like, that's just an excuse for a bully to steal your lunch. Like,
Mm.
sharing's caring. Yeah, yeah. There's other ways to show caring. But it's that kind of thing. I really truly believe that a lot of these things are in our power to experience, and we get told certain things that will happen to us at certain points in our life. It's like I have not experienced some of these things because I wanted to explore the possibility. What would life be like if I didn't have those constraints?
Mm.
And so I love that. I love your answer. Thank
Yeah.
you. That was brilliant.
Can I also just say that if there are listeners that are just like, yeah, look, I've tried that, but I'm really symptomatic,
Yeah.
that there are some things that can definitely, like, again, there are things within your power that you can do, and that you can become to be able to let go of those symptoms. So from a physical point of view, what I don't love about a lot of people's approach when it comes to healing hormones is that it's like, take this herb
Mhm.
for your hormones, or take this, whether it's a synthetic or a natural hormone for your
Mm.
hormones. It's like trying to replace what's not there.
Yeah.
Um, your hormones, your sex hormones like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone do not live on an island. So they're interacting with all the other different body systems. And what I see most specifically is if you have low depleted hormones, it's almost always because you also have adrenal fatigue,
Yeah.
which is chronic stress. And cortisol, DHEA, which are your stress hormones, convert
Yeah.
into progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. So it's
Yeah.
really hard to actually get healing of your female hormones if you're not working upstream.
Yeah.
And for some women too, they have what's called estrogen dominance. So that's where their body's actually producing too much estrogen or not clearing it. And that's
Yeah.
almost always connected to poor detox pathways.
Yeah.
So are there things from a physical point of view that you can do to help restore your hormones?
Yeah.
Neither of those are the root cause, but it's a place where you can actually start supporting other parts of your physiology that then greatly impact your female hormones
Yeah.
as you work on the deeper reasons as to why you're in a chronic stress state or
Yeah.
why your body's not actually detoxing properly.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Because yeah, there is always something underlying. It's interesting because I had a what do they call there was a technical term for it, but it was like mother's thumb. And I'd hurt my tendons, and the hand therapist, all these bits and pieces, and I went to the acupuncturist 2 sessions, and he put a needle in my toe. My big toe on the opposite side, and oh my gosh, it was painful, but it got rid of it. So there was other parts of our body when there's one thing happening, there's usually some other cause somewhere else, but it's manifesting in some way. And unless you know where to look, you're going to end up either misdiagnosing or doing something different. Or I still remember years ago, I went to see Don Tolman, and he's like, if your skin has a rash, just putting a cream on the rash is just mean the rash is just going to come somewhere else. And if you put the cream there, then it'll just manifest as something bigger until you finally take notice of what the actual underlying problem is and treat that.
Mhm.
And a lot of it is health. And to be honest, by the time we get to the age where we're supposed to experience perimenopausal symptoms, we've usually spent so many years focusing on everybody else's health and well-being
Mhm.
rather
Yeah.
than our own.
Yeah.
And the whole reason I even hurt my foot was because I was holding my daughter's hand to make sure she didn't slip on the gravel in the bushwalk, and then I go and fall. So
Yeah.
I was like, right, I think there's a little bit of a message here that I really need to take care of myself first before everybody else.
Yeah. Put the
So
old oxygen mask on first.
that's it, which, of course I do a lot of, and I tell a lot of people to do, but I also
Yeah.
need to have that reflected on myself too. So
Yeah.
I just love so much what you're talking about. And I'm just conscious of time as well. How can people work with you, find out more about you, and really enter your orbit? Because I think so many people would benefit from that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So our website is the best place to go, www.chrisandphilly with an F.fm. We've recently put out a book called Ending Body Burnout. So that's a really good place for a lot of people to start. It goes over 4 different parts of our method, essentially. So getting clear on body systems and then working on the mind, healing the body and the environment.
Yeah.
And on our website too, we have heaps of free resources. So we have I love scorecards, quizzes, assessments that are free that can gather a lot of information. So we've got a body systems one that looks at, which of your body systems are most likely to be out of balance based on your symptomology.
Yeah.
And also an ending body burnout assessment, which looks at your rate of burnout, but also where the root cause contributors could be coming from for you.
Right.
And we have our podcast as well, which you are going to be on very soon.
Lovely. And you do a course as well, do you? I think I've seen you had.
Yes, so our signature program, so the main way that people work with us is through our ending body burnout method, which is a 6-month deep root cause healing accelerator.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that would be, I'm going to be looking into that myself, actually. I watched you when you were doing it the last time, and I thought, oh, I'm curious about this. But of course, other things took my attention. I was like, I really need to focus on this now.
Yeah.
And we'll put the links if you're listening to this while you're on the go and you can't write any of this down. We'll put the links in the show notes so that you can actually get back to it and go and explore more, because I think this is so valuable. So thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today, Philly. Really enjoyed it.
It was so good.
Okay, everybody. Well, enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll talk again next week.